Okay, so once the kids have completed the course, they've taken the test, they've got their test scores, what's the next step for kids then after that?
Part of my class, and I really started to focus on this the last, I would say, 5 or 6 years, is this idea of your college timeline. So if you back it up, what is most common now? Kids are taking ACT prep in the summer after their sophomore year. That's most common. I have some kids, some advanced kids in ninth grade, some kids whose summer doesn't work, and so they'll take it in the winter of their sophomore year. So it's sometime, most common again, sophomore, summer, and then the second largest group would be junior year, just previous to the school junior test. So in Eden Prairie, typically they've administered their school-bound test in late February. And so kids are going through it. Right there, I tell kids, most important thing is focus on your academics, good GPA, participation, leadership, broaden your experience. After you have, one or two ACTs on your belt, and so you have a pretty good idea of where you're going to fall, then really the next major component, the summer after your junior year, really to me is the most important summer, because by that point you've made the decision: am I going to use one of my previous test scores, or am I going to retest either in September or October? And those are the typical fall dates. I advise students that summer they should work on their college paper, meaning their application. And it's pretty basic. In fact, they do this in some of the writing classes at the high school. So you're going to have a pretty good idea of what you want to do. You want to get that finalized. Your senior year is busy, and there are a lot of emotions for kids. So the more of that you can get done in the summer previous to when that hectic fall season starts, the better off you're going to be. So suggestions are: complete the college application paper. And again, you may modify it a little bit in September, October, but you basically want to have it done. I would say by that point, you want to for sure have your top 10 schools, start doing research to narrow it down to 5, and then start your visits that summer. There's been this idea that, geez, this college application process is so stressful. The key is, if you back it up and plan it out, is I would like to suggest it. How could going to Duke, if you want to go to Duke, or going down to the University of Iowa and making a visit there, or Madison, those can be great family events, but they're not going to be a great event if you're trying to squeeze in 6 schools over MEA your senior year. There's going to be a lot of stress there. And so I would say one of the key components to this is back it up, plan it out, and try and enjoy the process as much as you can. Make them family trips that you go and visit schools. I would say it's a really good idea by the start of your senior year to have 5 schools in mind. And again, you should look at programs and reputation and cost and everything. Make sure you visit those schools, and then as you go forward, put in the applications, kind of see where things fall, and make your choice from there.
Okay, great. So kind of one last question about that, related to what you're seeing in with your service. What were the primary concerns that families and students bring up to you during the course of this test prep?
I think it's just the process.
Okay.
But again, parents that talk amongst each other, and oh my gosh, it's so stressful, and there's so many things to do and whatever. I would say just relax, slow down, and it starts really with a conversation. And hopefully you start that conversation maybe in 9th grade, you're a high school freshman, and talk about, what are you thinking for college? What are you thinking for careers? And again, they may change 5 times over the next month, but you at least want them to have that in the back of their mind. And then, as you get closer, then you're talking about the ACT prep and in the process, the application, obviously the finances. And that's why part of this process now, is critical to get your finances in order. And that's where a service like yours becomes so valuable, because again, it's not just about your GPA or ACT scores. The finances are really an important part of this, to say, okay, where can we consider, and let's work back from there. So I think it more than anything else, it's providing a reference point, somebody who's done this for a long time that can answer questions and kind of help them through this process. I think that's the biggest concern. They know that, for you to score better, you're going to have to do practice and in review testing concepts. That part's pretty easy. They understand that. It's everything else that really, I think most parents have questions about.
Okay. And I love how you frame that as part of this process.
Mhm.
You mentioned the service that I'm providing at 7th Street Financial, and I refer to that as late stage college planning, right? A lot of people think about college planning from a financial advisory perspective, and it's, okay, how much do I need to put in my kid's 529 to be able to pay for school? Where we're at dealing with these kids that are high school sophomores and juniors, that's kind of done, right? You're not going to make, hopefully you've been saving along the way at that point, right?
Yeah.
All right. It's tough to start that process as a high school sophomore and junior and get to where you want to be. So with the late stage college plan, what we're looking at is getting in front of families then. And as you talked about that process of narrowing down schools and getting from 10 to 5 by the time you're a high school senior, what we want to do is work with families to say, all right, come to me with that list of 10 schools. And what I can do for you is, given the kind of academic standards that the kid has set for themselves, we have a pretty good idea of where they're going to end up with, right? You've either taken a PSAT maybe at that point. These kids have taken standardized tests all throughout their history. They've got an established track record of how well they do on those. And if you're consistently scoring, in those 90th percentiles, you're probably going to do pretty well on the ACT and SAT. Likewise, if you have scored traditionally in the 50th, 40th percentile, take a class like yours, do as good as you can with it, but we're probably not looking at that being a, 30 or something like that, right? That's like, hey, can we get that up into those low to mid 20s where we're over that threshold to get the financial aid or get the merit aid, sorry. So if we can work with those families as their sophomores and juniors and get that list of 10, we can kind of say, hey, here's what we can expect you to pay at each of these schools. And then you can kind of figure out, all right, and that can hopefully be a factor in narrowing that list down from 10 to 5. Now, if you've got that list of 5, and the beauty of that is you kind of already checked the finance box then. Like, all right, we know roughly what we're going to expect to pay. Maybe we were hoping some of these others were going to pan out, but gosh, if that's going to run $70,000 a year, that's just, that's too rich, right? We got these others that we think we can afford based on what other financial resources we have and what we could expect from need and or merit-based aid. Then as you go do those visits, you're just worried about the fit for the kid and the academics, and you've kind of don't have to worry about the financial side. But the key to that is to start that process early. If you get going too late with that, and fortunately, for our own family, we made a decision to go tour a bunch of schools after our daughter's sophomore year and early junior, which was great, very fortunate because everything shut down with COVID. There's a lot of families this year that are kind of been stuck behind the 8 ball as far as doing those tours because they just haven't been able to get in-person visits on those campuses this year. So, that's one thing. I love how you describe that as a process. Where I look at it from the financials, again, it's let's get in front of it, figure out what schools you can afford right away, and then you go do the visits. And you don't have to worry about, hey, what are they going to come to us with financial aid or not? We already have a pretty good idea. And now I'm just worried about, does my kid like it? Do they feel at home? And are the academics a good fit?
There you go. And I think how this all works together, if you look at where I typically start working with kids, after their sophomore year, it does that because now you're starting to plant that seed. You're talking about where you're going to send your test scores, all those things. And what you're doing, each step de-stresses, I think, families. The more you push to the end, it's not like the 1980s when I went to high school and, most kids wake up one day, they go take the test and they get the results and they say, well, I'm going to apply to these schools and I'm going to go there and what happens. it really does. If you start this early and start the planning, and again, I do a fair amount of work with kids in this regard as part of my class, that you get those things done early. And so therefore, again, the finances and the visitations shouldn't be something that's overly stressful. It's kind of nice to know, again, what's a list of schools that I qualify for academically, financially, which ones fit our profile, reduce the number, focus your list, visit the schools, and then make a great choice. The other thing I think that's significant for parents to know, there is no perfect school. Your child could go to Harvard and have a horrible experience.
Correct.
Your child can go to Normandale and have a first-class education. It really is about the commitment of the student. And the one thing in all this, it's this college selection process is awesome, but understand that ultimately this is going to be about a child committing to the school. And therefore, I don't think parents should feel guilty or shame because they can't afford brand name school. Nothing could be further from the truth. They can go to any school and get a great education, and that's the wonderful element in all this, that you have great options. And what you want to do again is maximize yours, provide opportunities, and find that best fit for your family.
No, and that's a great point there about the number of options. And it's funny you mentioned that, the way you phrase that, because I always tell that to my daughter. You're going to get out of it what you put into it.
Yep.
As we've been going through this process for the last couple of years, and she's narrowed down. She's going to be going to Iowa State in the fall. And I'm like, yeah, it's a great school, and we've looked at a lot of other great schools, and your enjoyment at this university is going to come down to what you put into it. Are you going to get involved in clubs and activities, be it the Greek system, intramural sports, your academic clubs? How much are you going to commit to it on that academic side? And the more you put into that of yourself, the more people you're going to meet, the more friendships, the bigger the network. Like, you will just have a better overall experience. If you want to sit in a dorm in an apartment and watch TV and Netflix and just go to your class, your experience is going to be completely different and probably less fulfilling. And to your point,
let's be honest, what's not to love about college, right? Every parent, you're like, oh boy, to have that opportunity again. And that's, I think, an important thing to think about. Go there and buy in,
right?
Get involved, enjoy. It's 4 great years of your life.
It is. Yep, absolutely. So to bring some of this stuff full circle, I think what you have talked about here, in coupling with the things that I'm talking about, what's really important is for those parents, and obviously the kid as well, be informed, right? Be informed about that process. Ideally, they're not waiting to their senior year to put all this stuff together. And it is funny, this stuff has changed. You mentioned what you did in the 80s. I was the same thing. I graduated in 89. I rolled out of bed one morning, took the test, was like, okay, there's my score. I applied to 2 colleges. Parents said one's going to work better financially. That's where I went. So
pretty easy,
right? It was a much less complicated situation, I think, than what a lot of these kids go through today. And it's because I think they have more options. There is way more knowledge that's out there about this process than I think there was a generation ago, which is great, but it can also make it feel a little bit overwhelming as well, right?
Yes.
Because all of a sudden there's like, oh my God, I didn't realize I had to think about all of this stuff.
Paralysis by choice.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
There's just so many options. And that's why you don't have to consider every option. You just don't. I mean, they're great schools here in the cities. You have so many wonderful options. Narrow it down a little bit, figure out geographically the financial piece, the academic piece, and go from there. But don't think, when you make the selection, gosh, if I, misselect the college, that it's no. Your kid will be fine. Go there, enjoy, buy in, and get a great education.
Yep, totally agree. Like I said, no perfect college, but the kid's going to make the best of it that they can while they're there. So I think with that, that's a great place to wrap up our conversation. I want to thank you so much again for joining me here today to talk about this. This is so important for these families of these high school kids. There's so much stuff out there for them to know. great services that you're providing. Hopefully we get some people to use the planning services on the financial aid and the merit aid side of things that I can do, and just help those families go through this process that can seem a little overwhelming, but there's a lot of help out there for them.
There
So,
is. There
yeah.
is. And with that, I would say too, I'm always happy to help. I get numerous emails daily, with just questions, and always happy to help parents, because I do realize it's a lot to take on, a lot to think about. And if I can help you anyway, please do let me know.
Absolutely, will do. And one of the things that I do is when the high school is having their parent nights or information nights, they do their webinars on just Q&As. I always pop in there just in case something might pop up that I can add a little something to on the financial side of things. I'm not an admissions person. I let the counselors take care of all that, but there is something on that finance side that I can help with. I'm happy to do that as well. So I think that's going to wrap us up for tonight. Thanks so much to Steve for joining, and you can catch this on YouTube and our other social media feeds coming up soon. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yep. Thanks, Jeff.